Okay, we are at the Battle of Pilot Knob State Historic Site. And this is a free Missouri State Park to get into. It has a nice little museum that we'll check out later. But this weekend is a festival that they have once every 3 years, and it's a Civil War reenactment. It's a free event to get in. They had a donation or $10 for parking. Other than that, it is a free event to get into, and it is a full-scale reenactment, a history event of something that happened 153 years ago. And I know this kind of event may not be for everybody, but it is an important part of our history as Missouri withstood more than 1,000 different clashes during the Civil War. Only two other states, in Virginia and Tennessee, had to endure more. And this in Arcadia Valley area, where the Battle of Pilot Knob takes place, is a very important part of our history. Back in the summer of 1864, the Confederates of the United States was on the verge of being snuffed out when they tried to rival forces together, and they got locals and throwaways together for their army at the border of Arkansas and Missouri. Many of these soldiers were unarmed or barefoot and didn't even have a horse or a water canteen. Finally, General Price had got enough troops together, around 9,000 at the border, and they crossed over into Missouri and came up through Fredericktown. General Price had wanted to take over St. Louis, and on his way north he wanted to conquer Fort Davison to get the extra arms for his men that were unarmed. He thought there was about 1,500 men, but this number was greatly exaggerated as it was less than half at Fort Davison. And many of them were actually locals and volunteers. In September of 1864, Confederate soldiers marched from Fredericktown over to the beautiful, peaceful valley of Arcadia Valley. This area was getting ready to witness one of the bloodiest battles of the entire Civil War in a very brief time of 20 minutes. Arcadia Valley was surrounded by mountains on all different sides, so Union soldiers had their cannons up on Shepherd's Mountain facing the valley to help protect the fort. The Confederates marched up through the valley, and the rest of the Union troops retreated to the fort. The Confederates then went up into the mountains in the Shepherd Mountain here and took over most of the Union soldiers and killed them. This was actually where most of the casualties for the Union side happened. Then they went down into the valley and started to attack the fort. They thought this would be an easy victory. But when they reached the fort, its huge hexagonal walls were much larger and steeper than what they thought. They were 9 feet high and 10 feet thick and surrounded by a large dry moat that at some places were up to 9 feet deep. The only access inside of the wooden fortress was through a drawbridge in the southeast corner. There was rifle pits and walls, and they could reach for 300 yards in every direction. Inside the fort was 4 huge siege guns and 3 howitzers, and they had 6 field artillery pieces that were fed by their powder magazine that was buried in the very center of the fort. Only 1 brigade of Confederate soldiers actually made it up to the fort. The other ones went up Shepherd Mountain and Pilot Knob Mountain, where they took over small Union forces up there. And when they got up to the fort, this is where they lost most of their men. They were hit with direct fire, and hand grenades were thrown over the edge. At this time, the men did retreat after a large loss of around 1,000 men. And now we are going to watch this reenactment of the Battle of Pilot Knob at Fort Davison.
on the hill. See, watch. Watch, we're getting ready to do it again. It's fine. So it makes it even funnier.
Colonel's desk!
After the Confederate soldiers retreated back, they went to work on building ladders that evening so they could try to scale the walls of the fort the next day. But the Union soldiers looked at how much ammunition and so forth that they had left and decided they were going to sneak out in the night. They decided to light a slow burning fuse in their powder magazine here in the middle of the fort and sneak out. They went right past some of the Confederate guards and up the valley north, and a little more than an hour later, their powder magazine here blew up in the middle, creating this large crater that we see today. Imagine the surprise that the Confederate soldiers saw when they came the next morning to see that it was completely gone. Over here on the edge of the fort, they have a gravestone marker. And here is the mass grave site area. You can see that they've left it uncut. Huge site right at the base of the fort behind me. You can see how high the walls are. You can also see all kinds of memorials and markers and interesting things inside the museum. But this concludes our trip to the once every 3 years Civil War reenactment at the Battle of Pilot Knob in the beautiful Arcadia Valley, Missouri.